Buckle up, we're back aboard bus number 2. My name is Talia Plaskett. I'm the Protected Crop Specialist at Perennia, and I'm going to be your guide for the remainder of the tour. For this final leg of our virtual field trip, we're going to be looking at livestock management. We'll be meeting up with 3 of our specialists and talking about sheep health, silage bunk density, as well as poultry production. So, grab what's left of your coffee and let's hit the road. For our first stop, we'll be checking in with our ruminant livestock specialist. Take it away, Katie.
Hi everybody, welcome to a sheep farm and another rainy day in Nova Scotia. So we're actually about to head inside in just a minute. We're going to be joined by Dr. Gwyneth Jones, who's a retired parasitologist from St. Mary's University, and she's here today to talk with us about performing fecal egg counts in your sheep. So a significant challenge that face Nova Scotia sheep producers in the summer months, especially when their sheep are out on pasture, are internal parasites, and in particular the barber pole worm. So for part of the life cycle for this worm, the worms will live in the stomach of your sheep where they'll suck their blood. So adult sheep, they will normally develop immunity against these worms, but in times of stress, like right after lambing or for your first year lambs, the anemia from the blood loss, it can actually be fatal. We only have access to 3 different types of dewormers in Canada, so it's important that you've got a plan in place so that you're not accidentally selecting for resistance. So one thing you can do is by looking at fecal egg counts in your sheep to get a snapshot of what's happening with the worm population. So to test if resistance has developed in your sheep, you look at fecal egg counts in the same group of animals before and about 2 weeks after deworming your sheep. So ideally, you'll see a really significant decrease in egg count numbers. If you do see this, don't automatically assume you don't have any resistant worms in your population. You can accidentally select for those worms and then you'll be in a pickle in a couple of years. On the flip side, if you don't see that drop in numbers, it could be that something went wrong during drenching. So definitely check again before assuming that you have resistance. Maritime Egg Cast, they've got a great podcast on the topic that you can check out, and also look for an upcoming video from Perennia. So it's raining now, so I think we better head on inside. Dr. Jones is going to show us how we can do fecal egg counts in our own sheep. This is a service that most vet clinics will provide, but there's no reason that you can't do it at your own kitchen table, which is our next stop. So come on, let's go. So along with a fresh sample and a basic student microscope, these are the items that you need to do a fecal egg count at home. A pipette, a spoon, a syringe, a McMaster slide that you can purchase online, a tea strainer, a small scale, some small plastic cups, enough salt and water to make a flotation solution. And now over to Dr. Jones.
The idea behind this method of counting worm eggs is a very simple one. If we mix up a sample of feces in a flotation solution of a particular specific gravity, then the eggs will float to the surface and the rest of the debris will sink to the bottom. We use a particular kind of slide called a McMaster slide. It has a pair of chambers, each of which hold approximately 0.15 mils of solution. And the chambers have a grid etched on the surface. The purpose of this is simply to make the counting easier using any given standard microscope. Where this is particularly useful is if you're looking to see how effective the wormer is that you used. It will also give you good information on the overall health status of the flock, particularly the lambs as they go through June, July, August. So what we do is we weigh out a sample of feces. We use 3 grams or 4 grams, and we suspend that in 15 times the volume of flotation solution. So if we have 3 grams, then we have 45 mils of flotation solution. 4 grams, 60 mils, and so on. The flotation solution we use, there are a variety of recipes. The simplest is salt. 40% salt, or 400 grams per litre, or throw in enough salt that there's always some undissolved on the bottom of the jar. So to weigh out 3 grams of feces accurately on a standard household scale is a bit of a problem, because usually they only weigh to a limit of 1 gram. This is it's a herb and spice scale, and it's accurate to 0.1 of a gram. So it's much easier to get an accurate count on a small sample. My handy little poop scale here, and I make a little boat out of a piece of aluminium foil just to keep everything clean. And this sample so this much of a sample weighs 2 grams. Add a little more. 3.1, 3.2. Remove a smidgen, and we have 3 grams. Then we need a beaker or a cup. Anything that's roughly a sort of a half a cup to 1 cup size is good. So a plastic dollar store cup is fine. So we have 3 grams in a beaker, flotation solution. So we'll take 45 mils. And we have a measuring cylinder, but you can just as easily use a syringe. And simply stir and press the material against a sort of a mortar and pestle until it's as dispersed as you can make it. The chances of getting every single egg out, of course, are maybe not as high as they should be, but if you take the time to disperse a sample really well, then you'll end up with a more accurate count. And the next step then is to simply filter it through tea strainers. Work very well. And again, grind and mash and try and get every last little bit of available solution through there. So time spent on this part of the process is really valuable. If you like, you can return the solution back to the original beaker if you've got enough spare beakers or cups, and try to rinse out a few more eggs. So what we need to do is stir and stir and stir and stir and stir to try and make sure that we've got the eggs completely randomly dispersed. Again, this step is really one of the more important steps for getting an accurate result. So whatever you do, just keep stirring, stir, 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 suck up a little bit of solution and attempt to fill each chamber. We have 2 chambers, that means we have 2 separate random samples. So as long as the grids are covered, then you're good to go. We let it sit for a few minutes for the eggs to float and everything, all the junk to sink. And then we check it on the medium power of a typical student microscope. We just scan up and down the different columns on the grid, add up the eggs in the 2 grids, total number of eggs in the whole slide, times 50 eggs per gram. You have a variety of lenses to choose from. The eyepiece lenses magnify usually times 10, and of the objective lenses, lowest power is 4, medium power is 10, and high power is usually 40. You want the times 10 objective. And so combined with the times 10 eyepiece, you're looking at a magnification of 100 times. And we focus on the green lines. I'm looking and I can already see one egg, 2 eggs in the first field of view. 4, 5. And that's from one line, one column on one of the 2 grids. So we just go through like that, up and down the columns, and then over to the other grid and follow the same pattern. And when I counted this one earlier, there were, let me see, I think 120 eggs altogether, which turned out as 6,000 eggs per gram. And then he definitely got start act that morning. And that is all there is to the technique, bar the other important component, clearing up the mess.
Wonderful, thank you. Hopefully we can all get together in the coming year to do some workshops to go along with this demonstration. I hope you guys learned something today, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you, Kay and Dr. Jones, for taking the time to talk to us today. Next up, we'll be chatting with Dan Mosley, our dairy specialist.
The purpose of this brief video is to demonstrate the silage rolling packer, which has been attracting a lot of interest on dairy farms in Atlantic Canada over the last 2 years. For the next few minutes, we will go over the reason we need to pack silage, the targets we are trying to achieve in order to have the best feed possible. There will be questions posed to 2 producers local to Nova Scotia and a chance for them to give their experiences using the packer, and we will have some of the resulting benefits to packing silage using this method. Achieving high density in a silage bunker is important for 2 primary reasons. Firstly, density and dry matter content determine how permeable the silage is to air moving into the silo, and subsequently the amount of spoilage which occurs during storage and when feeding out. Secondly, the higher the density, the greater the capacity of the silo, which reduces the cost of storage per ton through increasing the volume entering the silo and reducing dry matter losses during storage.
Prior to the packer, we had as much weight as we could put on the tractors. We had wheel weights on them, front weights, and we had cement barrels on the back, anything that we did to add weight to the tractor.
The goal is to achieve a density of 17 pounds per cubic foot in corn silage and 14 pounds per cubic foot for haylage. Even with the best packed silage, there is still some dry matter loss as fermentation takes place. However, the less densely the grass is packed, the greater the dry matter loss. More than 20% of the crop can be lost with densities at 10 pounds per cubic foot and lower. Filling silos as rapidly as possible reduces silage exposure to air and rainfall, and although packing time is critical, many operators are capable of very fast delivery rates to the silo, which often exceeds the capacity to pack adequately. And when you see a bunker settle, that is fermentation dry matter losses, in part due to poor packing. As a rule, the number of minutes packing required per ton of fresh silage can be calculated by dividing the tractor weight in tons by a known figure of 18. So a 5-ton tractor requires 3.6 minutes per ton of haylage, or a 10-ton tractor would require 1.8 minutes. The recommendation is then to spread the crop in 6-inch layers and pack continuously with heavy single-wheeled tractors. There are several roller packers on the market. Some have 5, 6 and 7 wheel options, where others have hydraulic extenders so the rollers can be pushed past the width of the tractor to get close to the bunk wall. Weight should be the biggest factor, since packing silage quickly and efficiently is the goal. Some of the heavier machines achieve more than 50 pounds per square inch, compared to a 10-ton tractor hitting closer to 20 pounds per square inch. Lockie McCachran of Folly River Farms purchased a silage packer at the beginning of this season.
We decided to buy the silage packer after trying it out. I guess we decided to try it after a couple different people told us that our densities in our bunk weren't quite what they should be, and we probably didn't have enough weight. So we did notice a big difference when we went to the silage packer. We're getting more silage in the same area, and the amount extra that we will get in, it's hard to say, but in that 20 to 25% range. We looked at return over investment, but it was pretty easy. The relative cost of the packer is quite low if we consider the lifetime of it, and the savings in less plastic and dry matter losses due to improper compaction, I think will pay for itself hand over fist. I chose this model. It's the one I demoed, so I kept it, but it was the simplest of the options out there. And actually, the price-wise, it was a little better price. So the simplest in the fact that it only has a few bearings to grease, and it weighed more. So that's what we're after, was compaction weight. And
Jack Thompson of West River Holsteins is using the roller for the 2nd year running, and so I wanted to ask him about his experiences using it.
we had always thought in the past that we had done a good job packing our bunks. We have a pull-type harvester. We always had 2 tractors with lots of weight on them packing the bunkers. And my nutritionist and the literature says that density is really important. So we had our bunks tested for density the way we were doing it, and they were pretty strong. Said, well, maybe we can do a better job. So an equipment dealer who had one in his yard, we asked if we could demo it to see if it would make a difference. And so we brought it out and we tried it, and just 2 days later we ended up buying it because we immediately could see the difference. Since the packer arrived on the farm and we've been using it, the only thing we've changed on how we build our bunks is we run a packer behind one of the tractors instead of a big cement weight. Everything else is the same. We build the silo at like a progressive wedge, and that's it. Nothing else has changed. The advantage that we see in the packer is we get more silage in the same amount of space. So this bunker, for example, we got more than 15% feed in this bunker with the packer than without. And all of my bunks are the same. We got from 15 to 20% more feed in the same space. So I have 5 bunkers. I can get 15 to 20% more in each one of those bunkers. That's one less bunker I have to build to increase my storage capacity. So the economics are elementary, I think. When we went to the dealer to ask to demo one of the units, he had a 5-wheel unit and a 6-wheel unit, and we went with the 6-wheel unit because it's wider, and we don't want the tractor. We want to be able to get as close to the walls as possible. So the 6-wheel one is closer. Plus it's heavier. We can get 2 big concrete blocks on the packer, so it's a significantly heavier when it's on the silage than the 5-wheel machine. And the cost difference was hardly anything between the two. So the packer goes behind the tractor. You tow it behind the tractor on your 3-point hitch arms. And with both weights on the tractor, it barely is able to lift the packer off the ground. So that means there's a significant amount more weight on the tractor. The tractor just rolls it up and down the bunk, so it's not carrying the weight like it would be prior. So I think it's easier on the tractor just to pull the weight around instead of lifting it and carrying it all the time. So I think there's less wear and tear on the tractor that's carrying the packer than there was before. But for me, the number one thing is results, and that is more silage in the same space.
Bunk density can be determined by using a corer, either handheld or on a drill, and weighing that sample relative to its volume. This is best done with numerous cores taken across the bunk face, so we can see how well compaction is working right across the bunk and what, if anything, needs to change. Samples taken at West River Holsteins have shown the haylage density increased from an average 12.4 pounds per cubic foot in 2019 to just over 15 pounds per cubic foot this year. And that was a 19.5% improvement in volume, which was very close to what Jack had expected as they were filling the silos. A lot of time, effort and expense goes into making silage. It's a critical part of the farming year, and so we should do what we can to minimize the loss of the crop once it's harvested. Packing is typically the weakest link in bunker silo management, and it appears that, for these producers at least, and others I have spoken with, using the roller has been another great tool in improving bunk management without incurring significant cost. If it can also prevent or delay the need for additional bunks being constructed, then that's a huge positive to the business's bottom line.
Thanks so much, Dan. Now, final leg of the tour, we're going to be checking in with our non-ruminant specialist. Take it away, Heather.
Hi, and welcome to this session of Perennia's Virtual Field Days. I'm Heather McLean, and I'm the non-ruminant specialist here at Perennia. In this segment, we're going to talk a little bit about alternative bedding for poultry barns. I'm coming to you from Maplewood Farms in the Annapolis Valley, where for the last year and a half or so, they've been using sand as an alternative to straw or shavings in some of their broiler flocks. They've been using it in their single-story barn, as well as the bottom floor of their triple-decker older barn. Let's have a look at some of the experiences they've had and have a chat with them to see how things have been going. So what brought you to thinking about using sand? What brought you to that idea?
Originally, we had a shortage of straw, which is what we normally use for bedding, and we had tried to purchase shavings and discovered that they were very difficult to get as well, and it was really just kind of a desperation to come up with something we could use quickly and easily as a bedding material.
So how did you go about testing the first flock through to decide whether the sand was something you really wanted to use or not?
The first flock we divided our newest barn, which is an in-floor heat insulated barn. We divided it into 2 separate pens, and so we used straw in one half and sand in the other, and it gave us the ability to actually compare the 2 bedding materials against each other, with everything else being pretty much the same.
So what sorts of things did you look at between the 2 treatments in the test?
We compared body weight weekly. We compared mortality. We compared the condition of the foot. We compared just the overall condition of the bedding material itself. And when birds went to market, we had them separate the two bedding materials so that we could compare condemns, overall mortality, overall condition of the birds.
So after you ran your test flock through, what did you conclude? What did you think of it?
We were really pleased with it. The sand was really dry. The conditions during the whole flock were really good. The birds really liked it. It didn't present any issues with processing at the plant. We had no issues cleaning the barn or anything like that. So we were really pleased, and we've been using it ever since.
So once you started running this through our regular flocks, tell us a little bit about how you set the barn up, and how you got ready.
The only big issue was we had to purchase a sand spreader. Just spreading the sand by hand was a lot of work, and it wasn't very even. So we got a spreader, which we just used to spread the sand in the barn, and everything else is pretty much the same. Our drinkers, feeder trays, paper, we put it out same place, same amount as we have always done with the straw.
Is there a specific type of sand that you've used?
We've just used construction sand, so it's screened for a particle size of less than 1/4 of an inch, I believe, but it's just generic construction grade sand, readily available. It's not very expensive, and there's nothing fancy about it, so it's kind of just run of the mill. We have had sand from a couple of different pits that they get it at, and we have noticed some loads have been a little bit dustier than others. Nothing that's caused any issues, but no, it's just regular construction grade sand.
So tell me a little bit about the differences in setting the barn up between the new barn and the old barn, and how you spread the sand.
The sand spreading is the same. We use the sand spreader. Our number 2 barn, the single story, has in-floor heat, so it's an insulated, heated floor, and we spread 1/4 of an inch thick, just enough to cover the floor. In our old barn, which is 60 years old, so it's not insulated, it's not heated, we'll spread 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch thick. So the only difference in the actual spreading is we make a couple extra passes just to make it thicker, but the actual spreading of the sand is the same.
And do you find any big differences in how the sand works as bedding in the old barn?
No, there's no real differences. Through cold weather, we've noticed any air leaks they'll show up a little easier, and it turns out they're a lot easier to fix that way because you can follow it right to the source. But as a bedding material, it's worked just as well in both facilities.
Joe, what about clean out? How has clean out gone in comparison to when you used straw in both barns?
It's pretty identical. There doesn't appear to be much difference. The material itself is a little heavier, but we use Steiner's tractor blade bucket, and clean out is pretty much the same. Doesn't seem to matter what material we're using, and we have used shavings, and it's been the same as well. So sand, shaving, straw, doesn't appear to be much different. We've noticed in the newer barn, the floor actually comes a lot cleaner with just the tractor and a blade than it would with straw. The straw just kind of sticks to the cement a little bit, and the sand is just like the floor's been polished.
Have you bought any other equipment other than the sand spreader to help you with using the sand?
Yeah, we purchased a sweeper for our Steiner. we got it to help with the sand, where the sand is so much heavier. When we go to blow the barn out, we found it hard to push it along. Now that we've had it, it's probably something we could have had with the straw to help as well. So we got it to help with the sand, but it isn't specific to sand, I guess.
So did you have any issues or challenges that cropped up once you started using the sand in the barn full time?
When we went to the full pen sand in our number 2 barn, we found the exhaust fans would create a bit of an echo. It was always there, but just the properties of the sand kind of exaggerated it a little bit, and it took us a little bit of thought to find a workaround, which we simply started using a fan at a different location, and it pretty much made the issue go away. So the crowding stopped. In our older barn, when it turned into cold weather through the winter, we started to see some air leaks, which had been there for years, and the properties of the straw, you didn't notice it in that area, but you could stand with a thermal camera and you could follow the cold line on the floor right to the spot that needed to be fixed, and some spray foam or whatever, and solve the problem. And you know, that kind of stuff should have been done long ago.
So when it comes to the sand, what did you like and what did you not like? Did you have things that you wanted to pass on to people who were thinking about using sand?
Yeah, we love the sand. It's dry. It's a lot drier than we thought it would be. It's drier than straw for sure. It doesn't absorb moisture, which traditionally everybody talks about bedding absorbing moisture, and I don't know if that's what you really want it to do. So we don't have any drawbacks or downfalls to it. It's turned out to be a wonderful bedding source that we're using in both barns year-round now, and have had for over a year. So, and we're going to keep on using it.
Thanks for joining us today as we chatted with Maplewood Farms about their experiences using sand as bedding in their broiler barns. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at hmclean@perennia.ca.
So thank you so much to our specialists and participants for taking the time to join us on our livestock management tour today. I had a blast, and I hope that you did too. For now, I'll be signing off, but I hope to see you soon. Have a good one.